Every town has its dark corner. Every legend, a sliver of truth. At Paranormal M, we peel back the surface to reveal what lies beneath. Subscribe if you're ready to face what others deny. I think I pissed something off at my mom's house. Context. Me and my younger brother were visiting my mom for the most recent Memorial Day. Her home is 2 stories in a nice suburban, I'm assuming neighborhood, not a car. She lives with her boyfriend and his daughter and son, plus my baby brother. I have 2 brothers. Everyone's bedroom is up on the 2nd floor, except for my stepsister's. For this trip, my brother had an air mattress in the baby brother's room, and I slept downstairs on a couch in the living room. As we've done many times before, really. The weekend was super fun, relaxed, and every night I slept peacefully and comfortably. Except for the last one. It was around 1 a.m. My mom had finished showing me the first episodes of Yellow Jackets, which she's obsessed with, by the way. That's factor 1. That show is creepy as hell, but by no means is it the worst I've seen. Factor 2, I also had smoked weed about 3 hours prior. Also relevant, but I want to convey that I'm no stranger to smoking, and know when it has worn off. I was definitely sober by the time we all headed to bed, but I want to cover all the facts. It is relevant. Everyone except me went upstairs. My stepsister was already in bed and had been asleep for a while. I showered, I packed my stuff because we were leaving the next morning. Laid down on the couch, to scroll on Pinterest and get sleepy. Right about here is where I began to feel this off feeling. The room felt emptier, like there was more space, like something was missing and I couldn't put my finger on it. It's not silent, there's fish and turtle tanks with active pumps in the room and a fan sitting in the coffee table behind my head pointing over me. It's pushing air away from me, and it's not dark. Some reptile lights in the room have night mode. The living room is also the reptile room, by the way. My point is, it's not creepy, and I'm not at all alone. And this was the first time I'd felt anything like this in this room, or in this house in general. Reminder, I had slept just fine the 3 previous nights. Anyway, I'm just laying there, scrolling on my phone, ignoring the off feeling, when suddenly I hear 3 distinct loud clicks come from the entranceway of the hallway leading to the garage. The best way I can describe it is the click somebody makes when trying to coax a cat to come to them, and I froze, fully expecting my sister to walk out of the hallway, leaving, which is also leading to her room. But nothing happens. I then start running down options. What could have made that sound? A faulty light? There's no flickering. An animal? None of the reptiles present have that kind of capabilities. My sister, well, maybe, but what was she doing? Why didn't I hear her door? She's been asleep for hours, and she is a heavy sleeper. Machine? Maybe, but which one? I've never made that noise before. And I do want to stress that it sounded like a person clicking their tongue. Even if you spelled tongue wrong, I still think I know what you're saying. No gears or electricity, and even anything dropping because I looked. Context on myself and this house. I do believe in the paranormal, more so spiritual. It's cheesy to say I run through my options first before saying something is paranormal, but I do, and I'm a huge skeptic because I want to find real proof. That is, until it fucking happens to me. I now have 2 encounters that I can't explain, and were fucking terrifying and not fun in the moment. This house is new for my mom. About 6 months she lived there. She's pretty spiritual too, and so far she says she's felt like there was an energy in the house. And there was one, but she hadn't felt it in a while. I bring this up as it's pretty relevant too. After I run out of explanations for the clicks, I start to remember my mom's account of the energy she sensed before. To me, the bill fits. The weird noise and the oppressive off feeling. The possibility I'm not alone is now running through my mind, but it hasn't hurt me this whole time, and I'm tired, so I just go back to scrolling my phone and try to ignore the paranoia. I lay there, my knees up to my blanket. I move from Pinterest to YouTube to watch one of my comfort content creators, because the uncomfortable feeling isn't going away. Couldn't really find safety in it because every time I would get too engrossed in the video, a hair would glide across my knee. I would reach for it and brush it away, and it would stop and then start up again. I get agitated and look for the hair, but I can't find it. This goes on for maybe 3 rounds of me feeling for the hair tickle and brushing it away, and it stops and then starts up again. All the while, this off feeling stays consistent. Not getting worse, not lessening, just staying still, making the room feel stuffy. I finally get pissed with the hair and I go for my blanket. Grab it and start to pull it over me. And there's this weird, vivid moment of me noticing that a portion of my blanket is draped over the couch arm. It's hanging out of sight. And I'm suddenly scared to pull it because, well, I'm terrified it will maybe go taut like something has it snagged. Well, thankfully, that doesn't happen, and I pull it over and onto myself, getting comfortable again. Finally, I start feeling secure, and I'm engrossed in my video and starting to get sleepy, and I pretty much calm down, and the off feeling goes to the back of my mind. It's not gone, it just seems to have lost interest, or so I thought. Next to the couch is a 2-level coffee table. On the lower level is some newspapers laying secure on some toys. My brother has been playing with it earlier that day. I'm laying there and I'm watching the video, when suddenly a sheet of the newspaper moves from the coffee table, drags across the floor towards me, fast. It only moves a couple of inches, but it's loud and it's sudden, and I have no fucking idea what caused it. I don't fucking stick around to ask either. I'm on my feet and my phone in hand because it's already there, and, well, scrambling over to the couch and to the stairs, which I just fly up because I'm so out of my mind scared, really. The next thing I know, I'm in my mom's room, standing over her, telling her what just happened, and, well, she is very sleepy. Just offers me to sleep with her, and her boyfriend's at work, so I crawl into bed without much of an option, really, and I wasn't about to go back downstairs. I'm in shock, laying there watching Seinfeld playing quietly on her TV. She doesn't start talking to me seriously until she sees that I'm still not calm after 10 minutes. We talk through it, and she just says it was yellow jackets in the weed, and listen. I would take that explanation for everything. Well, everything else. Except the newspaper. It drug toward me, against the airflow of the fan behind me. It was loud and the movement was violent. I don't know how else to explain it. 1 minute the room was silent, and then all hell broke loose. Furthermore, the torment didn't even stop after I went to sleep with Mom. The off feeling came back, and every time she would fall asleep, more shit would happen. The worst being me watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a white shirt in her closet move. I keep hearing my name. B. It's like harshly whispered. Like when I'm on the verge of falling asleep, promptly waking me up and not letting me rest. And yeah, this sounds a bit like classic paranoia, but I want to convey that I was pretty persistent throughout the whole night. Well, at least at hearing these things. And another person, my mother, didn't make it stop. I don't know, I just needed to share, and it was scary, and I kept getting this feeling like I was being punished by it. For what, who knows, but I'm not a saint, and I had been fighting with my brother a lot this weekend, so look, I don't know. Whatever it was, paranoia or otherwise, tormented me the entire night. Maybe it was the weed, maybe it was the yellow jackets. Experienced everything that night, and it's not recorded. I have no proof, and it sounds like paranoia, and most likely is paranoia. Except what that newspaper did, and that was pretty much going to bother me because I can't explain it. College room incident. My freshman year of college was strange for many reasons. It was the height of the shutdown during 2020. That and being in a new town far from family and trying to navigate a lot of very tough emotions and new realities. I was pretty vulnerable at the time. I wasn't necessarily happy, but I will say I found a deep peace in college. That mainly being because I had a lot of time to myself. See, I started out the year with a roommate, which was fun and all. However, when she dropped out and left me a dorm to myself for free, I wasn't complaining. I made the space mine, my own little paradise where I could escape to. It was small, and space for 2 people to have an 8x8 space to themselves, not including a small sink and mirror. When you entered through the door and turned to your left, you would see the 2 beds side by side with their respective closets. Turn to the right, and there would be a mounted shelf above 2 desks, also side by side. My desk was the one closest to the door, and I feel that's pretty relevant. It was a 7-story dorm. I was at the top. No upstairs neighbors and a gorgeous view all to myself. I loved the dorm. I think of it fondly. Well, regardless of this event I'm about to relay to you. My favorite thing to do was sit at my desk and draw, listening to music late into the night, which is exactly what I was doing when it happened. I was late, thinking 1 a.m. Saturday night. No classes to get up for, so I could stay up for as long as I wanted, no consequence. Headphones were blaring, hair up, which was relevant. Comfy clothes so I could just jump into bed the moment I started feeling sleepy. I did have a TV in my room, and it was playing Let's Play Quietly. I always had that going as background noise. Game grumps mainly. Night had been normal, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing but maybe sleep deprivation. I'm leaning over my X-Pen tablet drawing, fully engrossed, and in my music too. Remember the drawing I was working on, even the exact detail I was doing at that moment. 1 second I was happy as a lark, just kind of minding my business. The next I was suddenly aware of a strange pressure. It was slowly pushing down on my back and my neck and snapped me out of my thoughts. For a split second I was so confused and dazed by the sudden contact. Not sure what was happening at all. At once my body and my brain realized what it was. It was someone's finger that was pushing down on my spine. Someone was touching me. I screamed, launching up from my chair to spin around, fully expecting somebody to be there inside my dorm. But it was empty. Everything was still. Nothing had been disturbed, and the door was still locked. I just stood there against my desk, frozen. I was too terrified to move, trying to make sense of what just happened. Probably about 40 seconds of just waiting for something, and then I called my mom, told her what happened, and she assures me I'm okay and stays on the phone as I check my whole dorm. No one is there, and my desk is right by the door. If it had opened, I would have seen it open. It never did. I'm still alone. I'm safe. Nothing more happened that night. I had to just assure myself it was my imagination. But I replayed that moment, that feeling on the back of my neck. I can feel it now as I type this. The next day I told my friend about it, had her touch the back of my neck, and it was the exact same feeling. Someone's finger pressing firmly down on the top of my spine. It's the only way I've been able to replicate it. My hair's never caused it, no clothes, no body ache or cramp, and it was bizarre. And I have no explanation for it to this day. Maybe I was just sleep deprived, or maybe there had been something in my dorm trying to get my attention. I don't know. Nothing notable ever happened again, and nothing like that. wanted to share this experience as it's one of my weirdest. Has anyone else experienced something similar? I'd love to hear your thoughts. The static. Every night if I woke up, I would see what I can only describe as static. Little particles forming different shapes and dancing around every corner of the house. One night, this static formed an image of a man with a mustache, dressed in nice clothes, standing right next to our big clock. Fast forward to the future, and we're going through old family albums, and I'd never seen before these things with my mom. I stumbled across a huge photo with over 30 people in it, standing side by side. I point to a man with a mustache and say to my mom, I've seen him before. Turns out that this was my deceased great-great-grandfather, and the clock he was standing beside was his clock we inherited. The static world after that started to scare me, and the last night I saw the static was the scariest. I was asleep over at my grandparents' house. Me and my sister were sleeping in the same bed, and my grandparents were asleep down the hall. I awoke in the middle of the night to find the world around me covered in static. I wanted so badly to go to sleep, but I couldn't, and I saw my sister beside me. She was pinned straight asleep in her bed. I shook and I shook her, but she would not awake, and I even remember yelling absolutely nothing. I got up and I wanted to try to make my way to my grandparents, but the static started forming really scary things that I won't share. I was just begging that the static people wouldn't notice me, and I walked slowly and quietly, and finally reached my grandparents' room that felt so far away. I was shocked to find them in the exact sleeping position as my sister was in. They would not move or wake up, and I was horrified. I swiftly made it back to my room and tried not to look at anything going on around me, and instantly fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, my sister told me that she woke up in the middle of the night, and I would not wake up. She then described what she saw, and it was the exact same thing that I had seen. Before this, I had no idea she saw the static too. I was shocked, and we pieced it together that she woke up at the same time I fell back asleep. Now in our adult life, we still sometimes talk about it, and we later found out her mom had the same experience too. It's very strange, and I wonder if there's anyone else who's seen this static. I am 99% sure our house used to be haunted. My parents separated 10 years ago when I was still a minor. We sold our house the same year, and oh boy, none of us was mad about it. The funniest part is that my mom and me only talked about it after the house was sold, because we both felt crazy for believing that there was something wrong with the house itself. Now, this isn't the typical we saw ghosts story, because, well, we didn't. It started very tame, actually. Of course, the house was built right next to a small forest, but it wasn't exactly in the middle of nowhere. Imagine a small town with a path that leads to the forest, but there are houses built on one side of the path and the forest starts growing on the other side. During our very first year living there, we already had to deal with all three: fire, water, storm. Our neighbor had left on the grill. One of the trees in his garden caught fire, and the flames reached over into our garden. Luckily, my dad was a night owl and noticed that his garage was burning. Nothing happened to us, and he even managed to save his car, but having to deal with a fire so early certainly left an impression. A few months later, our entire basement got flooded. No, there wasn't a flood, it simply rained very heavily. My parents figured out afterwards how to deal with the rain, but the water was an issue until we sold the house. During a storm toward the end of the year, a tree in our property fell into the roof of our house. And again, nothing happened to us, but at this point, my parents were already very much done mentally. Oh my God, leg cramp. Oh, no. The older I got, the more I noticed that my parents changed as well. My dad got depressed and my mom developed paranoia. She was barely able to sleep throughout the night, and the tiniest sound would wake her up and send her over the edge, and I too got paranoid. Both my parents worked full-time, so I was usually home alone during the day. Normally, as a teenager, that sounds absolutely fantastic, but I hated it because truth is I never actually felt alone. When I came home, I would start checking every single room in the house, including my parents' bedroom, and then I would turn on the TV to make sure I wasn't able to hear anything scary. Not that I'd ever heard anything scary, but I was so sure that there was something else with me, other than the leg cramp. To this day, I don't know how to properly explain why I felt what I felt, and usually I would simply do my thing at one point, but this eerie feeling started creeping up on me like a cramp in my leg trying to kill me. My heart began beating really fast and I started shaking. Sometimes I'd even lock myself up in my room and urge like a plan to escape through the window if I ever needed one. Mind you, I was maybe at the time 14 or 15. There was one incident that really made me believe in ghosts. We had a regular entrance door, and there were 2 more doors, and it was a bit weird, but anyway. Second door was the only door that was made out of metal, and it was a really heavy door. We needed some force to open it, and it would always make this distinctive screeching sound. One evening, I was playing some games on my mom's PC in the living room. My dad was on his PC next to mine, and my mom was asleep, and suddenly I heard how the metal door opened, and I turned to my dad and asked, "Why is Mom leaving the house this time?" Ow! My dad was confused, and he asked what I meant, and I explained that I just heard the door opening, and my dad went and checked, and the door was closed. My mom was sleeping in her bed peacefully. Well, needless to say, I wasn't sleeping peacefully for a few nights to come. There were a bunch of other things that happened while living there. My mom developed asthma, and when we moved out, we realized that there was mold behind almost every piece of furniture. Our neighbor decided to pass on her own terms, and another neighbor found her. When her husband moved out and another couple moved in, one of their trees crashed into her fence. And literally a month after they moved in, when we discovered that the fence was made of asbestos. Jesus. A fence made of asbestos. Okay, whatever. I could go on and on, so after we sold the house, my mom summed it up perfectly. I always felt like this house simply did not want us there. I saw a cat-looking demon walking upright when I was just a toddler. This had happened when I was a toddler, around 3. And I'm certain this is not something I imagined since I was strangely aware even at that age, and remember pissing in my diapers and drinking from a baby bottle. I'm 21 now, and I still can't explain what the hell happened, so I'll start with the story. I was laying in the crib that was in my parents' bedroom, looking around, I guess. The lights were turned off, but the door was slightly open, and the TV was on with no sound. There was no one in the room except for me and my baby sister, but she was around 1 at the time and, well, asleep. My crib was right in front of the TV, positioned right below my sister's diagonally across from my parents' bed, so from my point of view, I could only see the TV. And out of nowhere, I saw this creature who was passing by my crib, and it looked like a black cat walking upright. It's just that it had no facial features. It was tall, and it looked shadowy. Yeah, I could see the outline of the cat-looking ears and the body, but it looked like a well-defined black smoke or something. I remember being calm, and I wasn't scared at all at the exact moment, but it stuck with me. Around 6, I started having dreams about it. It would beat me and humiliate me and try to kill me or my family members, impersonate them, try to get me, and it lasted until maybe around 11. It told my parents about it when we were in a car one day, and I remember my dad's reaction like it was yesterday. He was scared as shit, and he's an Orthodox Christian, extremely religious. And since I could speak properly, I knew how to pray, and I started praying in dreams, and sometimes it would go away. Sometimes it wouldn't. He insisted on it being a demon since he saw something similar when he was 20, and the difference is that he accidentally astrally projected and saw it, but still. I'm not religious anymore, so we have different views on the situation, but still, to this day, I think about it and I'm scared I'm going to see it someday again. And I also have crazy intuition and can sense things. I've had different paranormal experiences, but this one was the worst. I don't know. I'm just looking for somebody who had something similar happen to them. I need an explanation. Everything I'm going to say is real. I've always been able to see shadows, the kind that can only be seen out of the corner of my eye. I always thought it was my imagination, but in this last month everything changed. I'd already gotten used to seeing those shadows, so I no longer gave them importance. It's just my imagination, I told myself. But about a month and a half ago, I was sleeping in my room. I always sleep with my door open because if I don't really feel like it, I'm like suffocating if I don't, basically. It was about 11 p.m. and my sister woke up to go to the bathroom. And when she passed by my room, she swore she saw a huge shadow right at the door of my room. But the shadow didn't see her. It seemed like her attention was on me. She didn't see it. She told me because she was afraid that that thing knew that she could see it. She went to look for my mom, and they searched the internet for something to sort of, make that thing move away from me. All this without me knowing, by the way. They did everything from burning sage all over the house, and they even put a circle of salt that surrounds my entire room. I think that only made it worse. Since the day they found out about the grained salt inside my room, I had a recurring nightmare. It's always the same. The dream begins in my room. I'm lying in my bed and I have that feeling that someone is staring at me. And that scares me very much. I always get up and leave my house and toward the street, but everything outside looks very different. It's as if it were in ruins, and I run because something is chasing me. And every time I try to hide, it finds me. But I had not been able to see what it really looked like until last night. The whole dream happened exactly the same as the previous days, but this time when I finally managed to hide from him, I simply woke up. It was still early morning because it was very dark and I could barely see. I felt a strange humming sound, as if the walls were vibrating, and that feeling again, that feeling that someone was watching me. I just turned my eyes toward the door of my room. There he was. At first he only showed his head and one of his hands through the doorframe. It was very scary because I was definitely not a human. His face had no eyes or nose, only a very big and disgusting mouth with many rotten teeth. His hand was very skinny and long. I thought he was still sleeping. I was just trying to think of something else so that way maybe my mind would simply change the scene. Didn't work. I think he realized that I was awake, and he started to enter my room while he was singing a song with a slightly distorted voice and in a mocking tone. The lyrics were something like, "If you see a bow tie, it means I'm already here. If you see my bow tie, it means that I came for you." His voice was heard very close, as if it were, maybe sung directly into my ear. It kept coming in. My survival instinct was activated. Jumped up from my bed and tried to find my cell phone to call my mom, but I was shaking so much that I couldn't even unlock my cell phone. That's when that thing completely entered my room and I managed to see it completely. It was very tall. Even when I was in my room, I couldn't stand up. It was like it was, well, I'm sure it couldn't stand up. It was like a hunchback, very close to the ceiling. I only saw its long, skinny arm stretch out toward me. I felt myself fainting. The only thing I could do at that moment was shrink in the corner of my room as if in a fetal position. I tried to hit the wall and the floor so that someone would maybe hear me and wake up to help me, but it didn't work. That thing was slowly approaching, while somewhat faint laughter could be heard until it was in the front of me. I couldn't help but raise my head, and it was as if it forced me to do so. It was less than a meter away from me. Its skin was very pale gray and shiny, as if I was surrounded by slime. I couldn't move. I don't know if it was because of, the fear, or because I was under the control of that creature. I felt a horrible cold all over my body, and I only saw how, its face got closer to me until it was centimeters away from me. I managed to lower my head and screamed like I'd never done before. A few seconds later, I saw how the lights in the living room turned on and my mother entered my room, and I saw me there in the corner of my room in a fetal position looking at the floor, covered in sweat. I couldn't sleep again, and I was awake until dawn. When it was already morning, I went into my room to look for my phone, and I found it underneath the bed, and when I looked for it, I realized that the circle of salt that surrounded my room was no longer there. Just a completely solid accumulation of salt came from the corners of my room. Since yesterday morning, I've been very nauseous. Can't eat or drink anything. And it's because I vomited. And although everything seems to be normal around me, I feel out of place, as if not belonging here.
Okay, now you just gotta not speak all the sound of that. It will go away with my automatic filter, but the speaking it'll pick up purposely. Still not sure what was wrong with that house. As a kid, 1 to 9 years old, I lived in a large log house in rural Texas. My sibling wasn't born until I was 7 years old, so it was just me and my parents in the house. My parents considered it to be their dream house, but in reality it had a lot of issues, like poor insulation leading to cracks between the logs. There were a couple of spots you could literally see outside through. The house sat on a lot of land, but had been built in the mid-'80s, so it wasn't very old when we moved in around 1994. The house was 2 stories, with a large, open living room, a kitchen and dining room area, and a hallway that led to my parents' master bedroom. And then a stairwell that led to 2 large bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. The first few things I can remember happened when I was really young, maybe 4 or 5. I wouldn't look down the hallway to my parents' room because I would see the figure of a little boy standing about halfway down the hallway with a shaggy dog. He was never there for long, and it seemed like he showed up more frequently after my sibling was born. I didn't feel threatened by the boy and the dog, but I didn't really like to look right at them. My bedroom was up the stairs to the right, and I hated going up there by myself at any time of the day, but especially at night. I felt watched, and at night I would hear footsteps coming up the stairs. The footsteps never got closer. They always just sounded like they were the same distance away, if that makes sense. I hated going to bed in that bedroom, and I would beg my parents to stay a little longer or maybe read me one more book. They still joke about this. I had horrible, graphic nightmares up until a few years after we moved out of that house. The worst was the man who would stand by my mom's side of the bed, and that was when I was brushing my teeth at night. You could see into my parents' bedroom from their bathroom vanity mirror, and I always brushed my teeth and got ready for bed from their bathroom. There'd be a tall man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. They stood and stared at me from their bedroom. Later, I realized he fit the description of a shadow person. He didn't have any features, but I could tell he was looking at me. He's still one of my worst memories from that house. Maybe just because of how frequently he was there. By far, the creepiest memory I have of this time is like I was sick and maybe with the flu or something. My mom had to go into work for half a day, and I know I should have been home alone around 8 by myself. But it was like 2001. I was laying on the couch watching TV, and I started to hear something calling my name in a sing-song voice from the stairwell. I remember being so scared that I couldn't move, and I wondered if that was sleep paralysis. I'd never had it before or since then, if it was. I have a few family members who refused to be in our house by themselves, especially one aunt who would never be left alone there even for a few minutes. I didn't tell my parents anything about the house, until after we'd moved out anyway. I always just told them I'm scared, but never elaborated on why. Years later, I was about 13. We were on a family vacation, and I finally told my mother. She told me she had experienced some of the same things, like hearing her name called from somewhere else in the house and having weird dreams. When I was an adult, I asked my dad if he had ever seen or heard anything, and he said, "There's something horrible about that damn bathroom." I always thought someone was walking past the door, and there were a few times that I called out for your mom, and that was because I thought I just saw someone out of the corner of my eye. That's what he said. He went on to tell me he also hated the way the staircase felt, and said that even in the middle of the day, the stairs were just spooky for no reason. Let me tell you a little story. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, this really happened. Back in 2016, I went on a family vacation with my dad, and his wife, and my aunt, who is my dad's sister. We traveled through several places in Morocco, just enjoying the road trip. One day, we had a log drive to Agadir, a very touristy spot in southern Morocco known for its beach, shops, and restaurants, and apparently the beautiful boulevard. We drove for about 12 hours and arrived later in the evening. Everyone was tired except for me. While the others went to bed, I decided to head out to the boulevard and enjoy a drink, relaxing in the warm summer evening breeze. My dad told me to knock on the door when I got back and he would open it for me. As I was sitting there, drinking and enjoying the night, I started to feel something unexplainable. I felt like something was about to happen, but I shrugged it off, thinking I was just tired. Around 3 a.m., I decided it was time to head back and get some sleep. I took a cab back and knocked on the door, and my dad opened it. Now, my dad always greets me the same way. He says, "Hi, son," whether it's in person or on WhatsApp or on a phone call. He stood there in the doorway and said, "Hi, son, how was it?" Told him it was fine, but I was ready for bed, and he nodded and said yes. As I walked inside, I faintly heard from behind me in the hallway, "Hi, son." Didn't think much of it. I figured I was just hearing things because I was so tired. So I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I didn't think much of it. I figured I was hearing things because I was so tired. So I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. My aunt and I are sharing the same bedroom. She was sleeping in the bed by the window, and I was in the bed against the wall. When I walked toward the room and tried to enter, I suddenly felt a strong force push against my chest, as if something was trying to stop me from going in. I was startled, and I stepped back, but I shrugged it off, and when I tried to enter the room a second time, I felt the same push, but Since I had convinced myself it was just because I was tired, I ignored it and I just went to bed. Once I was lying down, I fell asleep, but it felt like I was still awake, and within about 5 minutes, all the lights in the room turned on, and I couldn't move, and I heard strange noises coming from my aunt's bed. I tried with all my strength to look in her direction, but I couldn't move a muscle. Then I heard her name, or rather, her call my name, tell me to look. I managed to turn my head slightly, and what I saw terrified me. Blood was streaming from her eyes. She was holding a knife, and she screamed that she was going to kill me. I have never in my entire life felt fear like that. I was shouting and begging her to stop when all of a sudden I heard my dad's voice pleading with me to wake up. I remember thinking, wake up, I am awake. That was when I realized I was actually asleep, because his voice kept getting louder and more urgent. I tried my best to snap out of it, and eventually I did. When I finally woke up, my dad was sitting behind me, holding me up and trying to comfort me. His wife looked shocked, and my aunt was sitting on her bed, pale as a ghost, with her head between her knees. I was still overwhelmed by extreme fear, but also completely disoriented. The fear was so intense and present that I rushed to the toilet to throw up, and afterwards my dad told me we were leaving the house first thing in the morning. When I returned to my room, my aunt still looked completely drained and unusually pale. I asked her what had happened. She said that she had a bad dream too. I asked her what she had dreamt. She told me she saw red everywhere, had a knife in her hand, and felt an overwhelming urge to kill me. We left the house and never came back. I need to get this story off my chest. I was wondering if anybody knows what this could be. I'm a pretty skeptical person. I always find some way to rationalize something scary or unsettling. But no matter how hard I try, I just can't understand what happened to me and my friends back in 2021. I was at a cemetery close to their house. It was late at night. Me and my two friends, Marina and Jake, which are fake names for privacy reasons, thought a nice activity for the evening would be to place roses on headstones that looked like they hadn't been visited in a long time in a cemetery nearby. I have done this before, but only during the daytime, and this time it was almost midnight, and thought with flashlights it wouldn't be a problem. We started at the front of the cemetery and planned to make our way down, reading the names and dates of each grave, noting how abandoned they looked and putting a rose on ones that we deemed fit. About 5 minutes in, I heard a quick whistle from the back of the cemetery. I was taken aback a bit, but I just thought it's probably my imagination or something, especially since I have a fear of the dark, and therefore was already on edge. But a few seconds later, there was another whistle. I turned to my friends and asked, "Did you guys hear that?" Both Marina and Jake denied hearing anything, so I just tried to ignore it. But a couple more whistles later, and Marina went, "Oh shit, I heard that." So I wasn't crazy. The whistles then began to hop from side to side of the cemetery, and eventually Jake noticed and said, "I hear it too." Tried to mimic the whistle again. And I'm a skeptical person, but I know one thing: never whistle back. I hit Jake lightly and whispered, "Why the fuck would you whistle back?" And the whistle promptly got louder and closer, coming from all different sides of the cemetery. Fight or flight kicked in and started booking it, and my friends followed my lead, and we ran to the car and got the hell out of there. Now, a couple possibly random things followed, or could be related somehow. If we were driving away and passing the gate, my back windshield wiper got ripped off. Ripped off. I drove the two of them home, and they're related, so they lived together and on a family-owned ranch. Within a week after, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I didn't sleep because of the paranoia and the anxiety. When I did sleep, I started to have reoccurring nightmares about getting bitten and attacked by rabid animals. Anything from rats to wolves. Those still have never stopped to this day. But Jake and Marina had it worse. That following week, various animals on their ranch turned up injured or dead. Chickens or goats, but a strange amount of them. And then Jake's cat went missing suddenly. She hasn't ever been found dead or alive, and Jake still is mourning the loss of his best friend. As much as I want to justify or brush off all of this as a coincidence, I can't help but wonder if this is something that all had to do with what we experienced at the cemetery. Has anybody had a similar experience before and know what it was or what happened? Or is this a reasonable explanation? I have theories on what it could be, but I'm not sure, so please let me know what you think. My mom and I both heard each other's voice call our names. Still freaks us out years later. This happened 4 years ago in the last house my family owned. I'll preface by saying it wasn't the first strange experience that we had in that house, but it was definitely the most unsettling. I recently read a similar story and wondering if anybody has thoughts. The house we lived in was pretty unassuming, the oldest in our neighborhood, but not necessarily old by most standards. We moved in about 15 years earlier, and my brother and I lived there until we went off to university. And over the years, my mother and I had several strange experiences, but we couldn't explain them. But neither my father nor younger brother experienced much. They tended to make fun of us for what we did experience. It says Dia, but did, I'm guessing. The incidents were never consistent, and it wasn't like the same thing kept happening. They were occurring randomly, and sometimes months or even years apart, so if you never connected them, they could all feel like one-offs. And sometimes it was just my mom experiencing it, sometimes it was just me, and occasionally both of us at the same time. Our cat, who we got about 6 years after moving in, also would occasionally just puff up and hiss at our staircase out of nowhere. Sometimes at other spots in the house, but most often the stairs for really no reason at all. So I heartedly believed that maybe we just had a weird little ghost that never wanted to show its face to the guys. Up until this last experience, which had me second-guessing what it was. My experience. When this last incident happened, we were in the middle of packing to move, and I'd come home to help as my parents sold their house during COVID, and I had an incredibly quick closing date. Left them just 14 days to pack up 3 levels of a house, and we'd lived in it for 15 years. We'd all gone to bed around 11, and as I usually need some time to decompress, I stayed up in bed to read. And around 12:30, I distinctly heard my mom's voice loudly call my name. It wasn't frantic, but it was enough to get me up and opening my door pretty quickly. As I opened the door down the hall at the other end of my house, my mom opened her door, looking clearly, sleep-mused or mussed. And irritated, and she asked, "What?" A little taken aback, I said to her, "What do you mean, what? You just called me." She looked at me a bit confused and said, "What are you talking about? You just woke me up out of a dead sleep because you called out Mom." And what followed was an irritable minute or two of bickering. "No, you called me. No, I heard you call me. I was asleep. Why would I call you?" "I don't know. That's why I opened the door." We'd both heard our own names being called and the voice being distinctly each other's. It hit us pretty quickly that neither of us could explain it. I just told her it sounded like her voice and it had come from downstairs on our main level. My mom agreed that it sounded that way for her too. We literally scoured the entire house for anything that could have made noise, but nothing was on. No one was around, no one was outside. We lived in a detached house in a very quite rural and small neighborhood. Hardly even heard neighbors talking outside, let alone something like this, which clearly sounded like it was coming from within our house. After checking out the house, we decided to try and let it go for the night. Talked the next day. Went back to my room to try and continue to read, but I found myself a bit preoccupied, for obvious reasons. About 20 minutes after, I had settled back into bed and something just crashed in the bedroom, which scared the shit out of an already unnerved me, let me tell you. So, while I was home, I had been sleeping in my brother's old childhood bedroom. His room had a wall of shelving that held his childhood toys. When I went to investigate, I noticed one of his toys had fallen off the top shelf out of nowhere. It crashed down behind a desk. The shelves hadn't been touched in years, and while we were in the process of packing, I hadn't even begun to touch his bedroom yet. None of those toys were precariously placed, and I had been stationary in bed for almost a half hour. I immediately rolled over and tried to force my brain into believing nothing was happening to trick and go to sleep. And even though I was kind of shitting a brick, over the last few years, my mom and I have talked about it a few times, and we're still completely stumped. While we'd had a number of experiences in the house before, we'd never heard voices, or at least not that we were aware of. And the fact that both of us heard it means that it, couldn't have been some kind of fatigue-related auditory hallucination. Like I mentioned earlier, we've had some pretty odd experiences in the house in the past. Heard something running through the upstairs hallway once, sounded like a child or an animal. Constant feelings of something smallish jump onto the bed, but what we assumed was our cat was never the case. He was either already on the bed or somewhere else in the house, and with no cat in sight. I heard our dining room chair moving downstairs one night, across our kitchen tiles, and this was pre-cat, so not even a possibility of it being him. And all of our doors and windows were locked. I always felt uneasy in the basement house. Well, the basement of the house. It was a normal finished basement, but I never got rid of the eerie feeling. I felt that while I was down there. There's definitely more of that happening, but wanted to give at least a few other instances for some context, because as weird and unsettling as some of these felt in the moment, never felt unnerved as I really did during this specific night. Something about this experience and my mom's voice really got to me in a way that no other experience ever did. And to this day, it's the only experience I ever had that truly made me feel genuinely scared. We always joked that we had a ghost cat or something since it seemed small, but after this night, I think my mom and I both lost that feeling, and the comfort that went along with it. I felt it could be something not quite as innocent. Some people we've told have said it could be a mimic, but wouldn't we have heard the same voice and not completely different words in each other's voice? What did I encounter, and what can I do? A man was shot to death in 2007 while living in my home. Another man was shot to death in the home in 2012. In 2016, a man died in the home from naturally deemed causes. In 2021, a woman died after getting cancer and abruptly dying. Our records only go back to 1977. Fast forward, my wife, 4-year-old daughter, and I moved in February of 2024. And things started like any other home. It was old and renovated, and we were enjoying the new space. However, almost within weeks of moving into the home, I started experiencing mysterious illnesses. The doctors couldn't explain them. First, it was the gout. Well, that seems easy to explain. It inflamed both of my feet, and I'm 27 years old at the time, perfectly healthy. My doctor said there's no apparent cause, as my blood doesn't have enough acidic material to even come close to producing gout. All the while, I lose a local election, and I had good odds of winning. My tenants stop paying and destroying my property. My wife loses her job. I lose $15,000 in property damages. I get hit with a random tax bill for 10 grand and a DUI driver hits my car, destroying it while parked at our house. I also sell a company and don't get paid. Still, having all of that by 27 is pretty good, but within 6 months of living there, my entirety goes from 2,400,000 to 200,000. My bank goes from 130,000 to 5,000 tops. Hard time feeling bad for you, dude. Everything I had was lost. I have to get a job while I sue the people who took my business and its assets without paying myself and my partners. But I can't seem to keep a job. I'm tired because of cuts or random events removing my position. Typically within a month of working. And then it happens. My wife is scratched with a massive 3-scratch mark down her arm. It's so apparent that I wrote it off as her doing it in her sleep, maybe. Soon after, it was like every night a new smoke alarm would go off in the middle of the night. We replaced the batteries and they would still go off. We had disconnected every smoke detector in our home just to sleep. Meanwhile, my illnesses continue. I begin passing out and going to the hospital for stroke and heart attack-like symptoms. I even faint completely where my wife says that I was saying, "Look up, look up, look up," over and over again. Never understood it. And again, every time my doctors and, the emergency room, they're all saying there's nothing wrong. I couldn't have these symptoms. Eventually, I have to sell off all of my rental properties to survive. I'm losing money hand over fist, and we received about $26,000 after expenses, debts, and repairs. We decided to reinvest every dollar into our future. I sent my wife to school to get a certificate for a career. Couldn't get a job with it. I invested in a new property and lost all of the money. Put myself back in school for a license with the state as a general appraiser. And again, within a month I lose my job over no fault of my own, in quotes. They can't use any of my certifications. Things get worse in the home. We start to notice things my wife's been noticing since we moved in. One night at 3 a.m, a massive crash wakes up the whole house. It's so loud we believe somebody tried to break down our door. I walk out to the living room and I see all of her photos and canvas on the floor. It was shocking and scary. For the first time in the home, I felt scared. The photos were on all 4 walls in the living room, and the only place we had photos. All 4 walls of photos down, and hooks and nails were still on the wall. I was shook and I couldn't sleep, and I tried to put it behind me, but I can't seem to explain what happened. At this point, we had had another daughter in the home, just a baby. We're about 14 months into living there. When we moved, my wife's younger 14-year-old sister, we moved her into the home for the summer. And she's immediately scratched night 1 in the home. I once again don't believe it, and I'm also feeling very depressed, financially drained, and emotionally. Drained and quick to get angry. I'm unable to sleep most nights, and I'm constantly tired. My back is in pain, my body and head hurt every day. The week before the main event happens, I attempt suicide by hanging. A soft attempt, but I didn't feel like myself when I did it. I had my kids in the other room, and I had almost no feelings at all. I prayed with the belt around my neck, and it was like a wave of emotion came over me, and things intensified. Cabinets started slamming, doors opening on their own, loud footsteps clearly as they sound, scratching sounds at night like animals. Then kneeling, my head started hurting. Then kneeling, whatever. I start feeling faint again, and my wife walks in and looks at my face and is scared, and she said, "You look really flush. Like there's not color. Are you okay?" I said, "I don't feel well." I go to sit on the porch and I start feeling numb. My whole body goes numb and I start getting really angry with my wife for no reason. I see her face and I'm so mad I can't see. I see my daughters and I have no emotion whatsoever. My wife sees me outside and almost screams, and she says, "My face, what's wrong with my face?" My eyes were blank as if it wasn't there, and I tell her that I need to leave now. We pack up a couple of bags and leave. While driving away, I start feeling normal and I start dry heaving. We called a paranormal nonprofit and had them come in and investigate. They were there for about an hour, and one lady was scratched, walking sounds recorded, and voices caught on audio and knocks were recorded from an entity. Also had random EMF spikes. The psychic medium said there were several spirits in the home. Several dark, several not. But one was particularly dark and powerful, like not human. And it's been haunting this home for a long time, apparently. Our records show that no one stays in the home longer than 2 years. We presented this evidence to the landlord after we left. They told us not to contact them, and they resisted the home for rent. And this whole experience, and more than what I can fit on here, has been traumatizing and eye-opening. But what can we do to help future people, and what do you believe we encountered? I was a skeptic turned believer, and I need to know why this happened. The house can hear us. Some background. For the past 5 years, I've been living in a 140-year-old apartment building. It's somewhere in eastern Massachusetts. As you can imagine, the building has seen its fair share of tragedy and death, up to and including murders. The building seems to attract the downtrodden and vulnerable, and for some reason, and once here, most begin to unravel and degenerate into a shell of what they once were when they first moved in, but I seem to be one of the lucky ones, knock on wood. The type of activity people encounter here seem to depend upon the individuals themselves. It's almost like something here is using people's vulnerabilities against them, sometimes purely to torture them, sometimes for more sinister purposes. I've always been scientific, and I try to debunk and find rational explanations. But living here over the years, I've come to rationalize and realize some things are beyond reason and rationale. It still amazes me that I'm saying this, but I've come to accept that this house has many entities, some not human. I've seen a disembodied female arm. I've felt the presence of a woman and smelled perfume when no one's there, and my gas stove's 4-spark igniters have the oddest habit of turning on by themselves. Then they continuously click in unison, and those are just my experiences. Most people experience activity that's much more intense and even physical. Unexplained bruises and cuts and black masses enveloping them at night. Red eyes in the dark, and I can always tell when the darker entities are messing with me because I begin to feel sickly and aggressive and, well, darkly strong. What does that mean? Like something wants to use me to hurt others. I've never experienced this until I moved here. Luckily, I've always had a guardian of good watching out for me. So the more darker entities usually know to stay away. Although that doesn't stop them from trying. Anyway, a few years ago, I decided to leave an audio recorder in the attic for about an hour at around 2:30 a.m. The attic has always been a hotspot for activity, but I still didn't expect to capture much. Upon playback, I was surprised to discover some strange anomalies. For a few minutes, I heard what sounded like a whispered, unintelligible conversation between two people. Some footsteps and then a curious clicking sound that seemed to be moving around the attic. The clicking and popping sounded almost like a lighter being flicked or somebody snapping their fingers. I remarked at how odd this all was and then just left it at that. I didn't think much of it until like a few months ago. It's when I'd just gotten home after being away for 3 weeks. Almost immediately I began to hear the popping. That popping I heard in the attic recording. Except this time, it was in my apartment and I'd be doing something and suddenly I would hear a pop in the next room. It would only be 2 or 3 pops at a time and always just out of sight or right behind me. I began to feel like the popping was something trying to test me or daring me to notice it. I figured although it was kind of obvious and odd, it still could all be in my head, at least that's what I hoped. Last night I was talking to my neighbor about how old this building was, and he happens to mention that he's been hearing strange clicking and popping sounds around the apartment. "Wait, you heard what?" I asked. I was shocked to hear him describe the exact same thing I'd been experiencing. I admitted that I'd been hearing the sound myself and that I'd also caught it on tape in the attic. We talked for a while and concluded that the sound has specific characteristics. It's always subtle and it's always in the next room just out of sight. And during each occurrence, no 2 pops ever happen in the same spot. After this discussion, I went back inside my place and almost immediately began hearing the popping. Except this time it was different. Like it knew we were talking about it and was once again daring me to acknowledge it. Distressed, I then pretended to hear nothing. Totally ignoring it made me feel better, and after a few more pops, it stopped. But for now, that's what prompted me to post my experience here today, as well as the worrying reality that the activity seemed to be increasing. I could go on and on about the popping sounds and all the other occurrences here, and many I've actually documented. But this post is getting wicked long, so I'll wrap it up. If anybody else has a similar experience or comments, I'd love to hear them. And if anybody's interested, I have uploaded some of the video evidence I've captured thus far, and currently working on uploading the audio evidence, or as they wrote, eviscence. As I said in my first post, the apartment building I live in is in Massachusetts, and it's 104 years old. The old building has seen much over the years, including countless deaths. My apartment has always had its weird quirks, like my 4 gas stove igniters regularly coming on and clicking in unison, and the odd popping sounds that seem to move from location to location. But the main one is the nagging entity that stays in my bathroom. It sounds funny, but over the 5 years I've lived here, I've come to realize there's a spirit in my bathroom, and it's unquestionably female. Here are a few of the experiences I've been having which led me to this strange realization. It all started when I had arrived home late one night. As upon entering my apartment, I suddenly caught the scent of a female perfume. Now, there wasn't like a woman in my apartment at the time, so I paused for a brief moment to think, and that's when I suddenly got the feeling I wasn't alone, and it was an unmistakable feeling. It felt just like there was a woman standing around the corner in my kitchen. Her presence wasn't threatening or frightening, just the opposite, in fact. It was almost welcoming. And just as quickly as the feeling had come, it disappeared, and I shrugged it off and went about my business. The reality that I may not be alone in my apartment didn't sink in until months later. Sitting on my bed playing guitar one night, when I happened to glance up at my open bedroom door, and as I did, I clearly saw an arm pass by and disappear to view into the next room. This was physically impossible as there was a couch on the other side, as well as the fact that I was completely alone. So I sat there for a moment, frozen, tried to process what I had just seen. It's funny how the mind reacts when confronted with the impossible. It's almost like a short confronted with the impossible. Oops. It's almost like a short circuiting of the brain, I mean. There's no way I just saw a woman's arm clad in old-style clothing just pass by my door, I told myself over and over. But I knew what I saw, and it only confirmed my suspicions. The oddest part, however, was the arm's, appearance, I guess. Had an almost fluorescent look to it, like a TV screen image with the saturation or tint settings turned all the way up. The arm clearly stood out from the surroundings and became like all the lights I had on. I couldn't blame it on shadows in my eyes playing tricks, and this was the only time I'd visually seen her. Although I constantly feel her presence. She usually makes herself known to me through feelings or emotions, and she'll always let me know when she wants me to do something, like a mental chore or furniture setup. It sounds funny, I know, but I've gotten used to it over the years, and we've sort of developed a weird sort of relationship. One thing she really doesn't like is when I have women over. I'll have this oppressive feeling like there's somebody glaring angrily at me. Or in the most extreme cases, I'll suddenly feel sickened to my stomach, or my girlfriend can feel this as well. Constantly remark that she feels like she's being watched by an angry woman. The reason I think she stays in my bathroom is because of how I feel when I'm in there. My bathroom is windowless, and whenever I'm in the shower, I'll become aware of a presence standing just outside my shower curtain. And in fact, I had to start keeping the bathroom door shut. Because I can, feel something, like it's looking at me. I know how weird this all sounds, but it's the truth, and there are many more instances, but in the interest of time, I'll just list these major occurrences.